Hello and welcome back to chapter 25. We are talking about the female reproductive system and we are on the second part. Last time we talked about the first part of oogenesis, the formation of the ovum. And remember that part happens before birth. Right now we are going to go on to the second part of oogenesis, which, believe it or not, does not continue until puberty hits for a female. So the 200,000 first stage eggs that are created before the female is born just sit there until puberty begins. And this process will repeat until menopause, when menstruation stops. And you will see how it is related in the future. Okay, so first off, when dealing with cell division, this right here is the ovary. And what you are seeing is literally a cycle. It actually travels in a circle within the ovary. And we are going to start out with the primary follicle and the primary ovum. They are what was created that she was born with. Now, every month between 20 to 50 of these eggs start the process of development. However, only one of them will actually finish the process and go through and be released for the possibility of pregnancy. Now, basically, first what happens is you have that egg cell, the ova, that are developing. And the follicle cells, remember, around them continue to develop and to grow. And at that point, you have completed meiosis 1. In other words, it divided. Okay, now, at that point you then have a secondary oocyte or ovum. This is what is going to be the mature cell. Now, if you come and look at the left-hand side, what you'll see is meiosis completes, and you see how this arrow branches off. When this arrow branches off, what's actually happening is cell division. But what you'll see instead of this nice big oocyte is this little dot of a thing. And basically what happens is the nucleus of cell division leaves. And all of the cytoplasm stays. So you had 2 cells created. The nucleus of one of them leaves and it just dies. There's nothing to it. And you end up with a cell that has twice the amount of cytoplasm. So it ends up being really, really big. Okay, and that's the secondary one. Now, you end up with it inside this mature follicle. Now remember, the follicle and things around it are going to be feeding it and taking care of it and doing all that type of stuff while it's sitting there. But then we come down to, the first polar body dies, sorry. Then we come to the process of ovulation, which is the actual release of the ovum. Okay, I love how they put it on this, that it's liberated. Okay, it is a liberated ovum. It leaves. It literally bursts out of this follicle. Okay, we'll talk about what happens to it later, but it bursts out. This is ovulation. Okay, now, back over on the left. If it is not fertilized with sperm, all that happens is the ovum dies. And it will be released when the female has her period. Okay, now if it is fertilized, a whole different process happens. Okay, what you'll see here is fertilization is, by the way, when the sperm enters and joins the egg. We'll talk more about that in a little bit. But what happens at that moment, which is kind of strange, is the rest of cell division. Okay, so at the same time a sperm is entering in order to add its DNA to the egg, the cell divides and another little polar body leaves, and you end up with another dead cell that leaves. Now, once they combine, once the sperm and egg combine, it is now known as a zygote. So a fertilized egg, or the combination of the male and female's DNA, is now a zygote. It has a full set of DNA instead of half of mom's and dad's separate. Now, before we leave the ovary, we need to talk about what happened to this follicle. Okay, ovum left. Now what you have is called a corpus luteum. And you can see it kind of changes in shape and size as it goes. Corpus luteum just means a yellow body. In other words, a yellow thing. Luteum means yellow. Corpus means body. Now, the corpus luteum you are going to see later, so do not forget these as they are traveling around inside of the ovary, and eventually the corpus luteum starts degrading and becomes the corpus albicans, which is the white body. Okay, and at that point it's degenerating and being recycled and reabsorbed into the body. Okay, so that is the process of ovulation. Okay, you have a cell, the egg is created, it develops, it matures, you have the first polar body made, it continues developing and maturing. Once it's matured, the follicle literally just like pops open, the ovum floats out, and then the remains of the follicle becomes the corpus luteum. And our little egg friend here travels on its way. Now, next we are going to talk about fertilization, and that's actually how a sperm enters an egg. Okay, realize that this is pretty complicated actually, and you'll have one egg with potentially tens of thousands of sperm trying to enter at the same time. Now, first off, they got to get there. Okay, so the sperm finally makes contact with the egg. Now, remember that little thing we talked about before, the acrosome that contains digestive enzymes, or if you prefer, hydrolytic enzymes. Okay, once the sperm comes in contact with the outer part of the egg, which is known as the zona pellucida, there's a chemical reaction that happens, and the acrosome bursts open and starts digesting through. Okay, and it digests through that entire layer. This is kind of a protective jelly-like layer that's on the outside of the egg. Then it goes in and it enters a space that's between the jelly-like protective layer and the egg itself. Now, in this area, once it gets all the way through, the membrane of the sperm actually joins the membrane of the egg, and they become a merged membrane at that point. Now, once that happens, the nucleus of the sperm is able to be released inside of the egg because the membranes have joined. Okay? Now, almost instantaneously, once the sperm nucleus enters the egg, you have these cortical granules that are lined right inside the egg. When that happens, when that sperm nucleus enters, these cortical granules are going to almost instantaneously join with this layer that you see, that outer layer of the membrane. And what happens is it completely changes the structure of that membrane and makes it so that no other sperm are able to enter. Okay? Because you don't want another sperm to enter, otherwise you're going to have the wrong amount of DNA. Oh, and by the way, this is completely not to scale. Sperm are much, much, much smaller than the ovum. Okay, next time we will talk about what happens, and we'll be going through some of the different things of the female reproductive system. Until next time.